if you have held on to 1,000 Bitcoin for this long and you want to go monetize that, 80,000 Bitcoin for this long, and you want to go monetize that, it's billions of dollars, Yeah, okay. How can you fault that? Go buy your chateau or your yacht or whatever that you're looking for and fund that lifestyle that you want, that you've held out for. Great, whatever. No big deal. But I think that some of these whales that are selling are turning around and saying, they're like, look, I've had 100, 200 or whatever X on my money already. I want to get to, like, right now, yeah, we may get a 10x in Bitcoin. I believe we get a 10x in Bitcoin over the next 7-8 years.
Bitcoin is currently trading around $111,000, showing signs of a cautious market as it navigates a typical September season known for its volatility. Analysts predict the price could rise to about $125,000 by the end of the month, though dips to around $100,000 are also expected. This mixed outlook comes amid softer market momentum and historical trends, where Bitcoin often faces downward pressure in September. The broader crypto market reflects this uncertainty, with significant outflows seen in US spot Bitcoin ETFs, contrasting with increased interest in Ethereum ETFs. Investors remain watchful for upcoming US economic data, especially job reports, which could influence Federal Reserve decisions on interest rates and liquidity, potentially affecting Bitcoin's price and risk appetite across markets. Some large Bitcoin holders, often called whales, have been selling portions of their holdings. After years of holding, these investors may be monetizing billions of dollars accumulated over time to fund lifestyles or diversify. However, it's believed many still expect a substantial increase in Bitcoin's value, possibly up to 10 times in the next several years. So these sales don't signal a loss of confidence, but rather a strategy to access gains while maintaining long-term optimism. In a recent interview, James Lavish discussed this trend, explaining that whale sales can be part of broader moves within the market. He suggested that while some investors take profits to live their goals, others look to reinvest in new opportunities related to Bitcoin's growing ecosystem. Let's bring you more clips from the interview for further insights into James Lavish's sharp market analysis. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more content. Thanks for sticking with us. Enjoy the rest of the video.
So a big part of what you're seeing is these big moves that are on light volume. And so what we see is somebody who goes and wants to build up a big position. They're going to have to move the stock or the Bitcoin price or the treasury price, because there's not a lot of volume out there. So this weekend and into today, we're seeing these large enough moves, multi-percent moves in Bitcoin. Sounds like a lot, $3,000, but it's really only 2.5%. Not that big of a deal for Bitcoin. But there's not a lot of volume, Brandon. It's like it's more of a buyer strike than a tsunami of sellers, So that's one thing. I think that Powell wants to solidify his legacy that he got the job done. He did not let inflation rage out of control, although it did rage, and it got nearly got out of control. And it was because of what the Fed did. Let's make that clear. They caused this problem. But he did put the fire out, and he wants to cement his legacy there. Now, the question is, what words does he use to do that? And, I believe that he's going to come out and he's going to say that we're getting comfortable with the trajectory of inflation. We're more concerned about jobs, which means that it opens a door for a 25 basis point cut in September, which is a really big deal for stocks and risk assets and things like Bitcoin and gold, because it's an expansion of liquidity. Basically, you make the cost of capital lower, which is good for those kinds of assets and securities. And so, but I do believe he leaves the door open. And what you're seeing right now is some uncertainty around how he's going to come out this week. What kind of numbers are still coming? Because we still have another CPI, another PPI, another PCE. We got more unemployment numbers between now and the next September meeting, and he could change his mind like that. And so there's probably some uncertainty going on, and Bitcoin's definitely sniffing that out and getting a little nervous here. Again, on very light volume. I think that the data is giving Powell enough air cover, especially on the employment side, that he could ease but 25 basis points. And it's not that he's giving in to Trump. If he was giving it to Trump, he'd ease 50, because that's what Bissett just demanded. For all intents and purposes, again, he didn't tell him to do that. He said that the models are showing that we're 150 basis points, like 1.5% above neutral, which I think is aggressive. I think we're maybe 1% above neutral. But regardless, whatever models you're using, we are above, and we could ease. But and I think that it's time. And so the markets are starting to tell you that. And the stock market will suffer if Powell comes out this week and he's tremendously hawkish, if he's terribly hawkish, and he does not keep the door open for a rate cut, you're going to see a drawdown in the market. That's my opinion. I believe it's pretty obvious though. But I think Bitcoin and some of the tech stocks are getting nervous here. You had not great earnings this morning. From some of the tech leaders, and so the Qs are off, and the S&P is kind of dragging a little bit, and Bitcoin is leading the way. It continues to be the tip of the risk spear. I don't believe it should be, but it is. We just have to recognize that. People have to get their heads around that, especially the maxis, who I agree with them that it shouldn't be, but it is right now because it's considered that way. And it's going to continue to trade that way until further notice. Well, I mean, we've seen whales selling. We saw a big whale sell 80,000 Bitcoin just a couple of weeks ago. Price barely moved. That's good news. Now the question is, are they selling to go fund a lifestyle that they've held out for? Which, hey, God bless. If you have held on to 1,000 Bitcoin for this long and you want to go monetize that 80,000 Bitcoin for this long, and you want to go monetize that, it's billions of dollars, Yeah. Okay. How can you fault that? Go buy your chateau or your yacht or whatever that you're looking for and fund that lifestyle that you want, that you've held out for. Great. Whatever. No big deal. But I think that some of these whales that are selling are turning around and saying, they're like, look, I've had 100, 200 or whatever X on my money already. I want to get to, like, right now, yeah, we may get a 10X in Bitcoin. I believe we get a 10X in Bitcoin over the next 7-8 years. That's nothing like I've experienced up to now. The OGs, the whales that have been around for a long time. And so I think some of them want to remain in Bitcoin, but they want to get a little bit more out of it in this space. And there's a way to do that. The way to do that is to buy these Bitcoin treasury companies, because they'll give you what will be a multiple on that return, I believe. Now, not all of them, some of them, a handful of them will do very well, I think. That's my thesis. It's the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, that my hedge fund, that's what we believe. And we're invested in some of these because we believe that. Not all of them. We're not invested in every single treasury company, but we're invested in a select number of them that we believe in. I think that there's some rotation going there, Brandon. It's coming out of Bitcoin, going into these treasury companies, and it's being washed back into Bitcoin as it happens. That's why you're seeing the price kind of grind sideways, higher, a little bit lower, sideways. It's kind of grinding here from 100 to 120. It's been in this range since May, basically. It dipped down a little bit in June, but since May, it's been in that range. It was in the 100 to 110 level, and then it moved up in July from 110 to 120. It's been between there and 110, 111, somewhere in there since the beginning of July. And I think what you're seeing is this rotation. some OGs that are moving out of Bitcoin and into the treasury companies. And some of them are joining boards and doing that stuff and creating these treasury companies themselves. I mean, Adam Back is doing one.
Right now, Bitcoin's price moves can seem big, but often happen on low trading volume. When someone wants to buy a large amount, they have to move the price because there isn't enough activity to absorb big trades smoothly. The market seems to have more buyers holding back than sellers pushing out, creating uncertainty. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is trying to show he controlled inflation, which got quite high. Many expect Powell to say inflation is under control and focus more on jobs, possibly signaling a small interest rate cut soon. This would be good for Bitcoin and stocks because lower interest rates make borrowing cheaper and encourage investment. However, upcoming economic reports could cause shifts, leaving the market cautious. Some big Bitcoin holders recently sold large amounts without much price effect, suggesting they might be moving funds into Bitcoin treasury companies, public firms holding Bitcoin and raising money to grow their holdings. This shift keeps Bitcoin's price steady, bouncing between $110,000 and $120,000 over the past months. Some whales are even joining these companies to help manage them. This shows a change where investors look for more ways to benefit from Bitcoin beyond just holding the coin itself. Let's go back to the interview and watch more clips to gain insights from James Lavish.
So first of all, the MNAV that you're talking about, the multiple on the underlying Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and that's MNAV, the multiple on the NAV of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We've seen these things fluctuate around. We started buying MicroStrategy when the MNAV was 1.2. But we talked to them. We talked to Michael and we talked to Sharish, their treasurer, who helped implement this strategy, was spearheading it for them. We understood what they were trying to do and what their goal was and what their goal is. We still believe that. He's created all kinds of strategies around it. So MicroStrategy is a kind of a special situation because they're so far ahead of everybody else. They've got over 600,000 Bitcoin now. And so, and they've got access to capital markets that other companies just don't have. Not all of them, some of them do. CEP 21 certainly does with the involvement of Cantor and Jack Mallers' new play there. But there's all kinds of different ways that these companies can create the ability to buy more Bitcoin. And it's using converts, which can actively dampen the volatility. Well, it actually dampens, it holds the price of the stock down because as you issue a convert, there are convert arbitrage traders that will buy the convert and then short the stock in order to delta hedge it, and like what's called the optimal hedge around owning that convertible bond, because it can be converted into stock at a certain price, so they'll trade around that. Or you could do preferred shares like MicroStrategy is doing, and that is not dilutive to the stock. It doesn't put pressure on the stock because you're basically saying that we're going to pay you a dividend off of the future, basically the future price of Bitcoin. And so that's a special case. But there are other cases, like Metaplanet came out and was basically the only proxy for Bitcoin in all of Japan. So if you were a retirement account or an investor that wanted to buy Bitcoin but couldn't get it into your brokerage, you could buy Metaplanet and get a proxy to that. And now they're doing a similar playbook to MicroStrategy, and so they're able to create a way to arbitrage the capital markets. You're borrowing money in yen and you're buying Bitcoin with it. It's an arbitrage, and so they will warrant a different multiple. They have a different kind of moat there because there's not another proxy for buying Bitcoin there like that. So that's a strong moat. It could change. We don't know if and when, but that's more of a regulatory issue. Then you've got the same thing in other areas, whether it's Brazil or Canada or the UK, you've got similar situations. And so there are companies that were invested in those areas because of that. Then you get the question of what you're saying is, what MNAV makes sense? And it is different for each one. And it really depends on a lot of the factors that you named. Do they have a moat? Is it a geographical, regulatory moat? Is it that they have great access to capital to expand their balance sheet? Do they have an original investor in and partner in their venture, like CEP does with Tether, 21 does with Tether? Is there something like that going on? Who is the CEO? Can they generate enough interest, and can they lead that strategy to that Bitcoin treasury strategy to do that? That's another question mark. And we believe that these things are going to settle in somewhere around 1 to 2.5 MNAV for virtually all of them. There may be outliers like Metaplanet that will be higher. But what we're seeing here, in my opinion, Brandon, is people figuring that out and trying to shake out who should be trading at what MNAV according to what they believe how much Bitcoin yield they can generate, meaning how much of an MNAV should they trade at because of how much more Bitcoin they can create in their balance sheet per shareholder. There's going to be a maturity process here in all of these companies. And in the companies who do add Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So you hit on something that's important. Let's kind of unpack this. MicroStrategy is they basically said they're executing a financial engineering strategy to get more Bitcoin on the balance sheet for their shareholders. That's all they've said so far. I do believe that they're going to get big enough that they can do other things with that Bitcoin. They have not laid out a plan for that yet. Michael's a smart guy. He's going to figure out ways that they can capitalize that and keep growing this company. He wants, to eventually be the biggest company in the world. Why not? And he eventually will be if he sticks with the strategy and Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do. 21 explicitly came out and said they're going to be a Bitcoin finance company. They're going to structure products around it, lending products, collateralized products, so that is different. That is what they're headed to do. That's their goal. It's a different strategy. Metaplan is much more along the lines of a Japanese version of strategy, of MicroStrategy, doing the same kind of financial engineering. And then you've got other companies that are looking to use cash flows to fund this Bitcoin treasury. This is really important, and this is something that we have not seen be rewarded yet, which is real companies with real cash flows using those cash flows to buy Bitcoin and add to their treasury. That has not been rewarded yet. The current reward is financially engineer Wall Street out of dollars to use those dollars to put into Bitcoin. And so arbitrage that capital market. That's been the big play so far. I do believe that eventually we get to this point, Brandon, where people realize that the best play long term, once this has been kind of soaked up, the capital markets play, the arbitrage play, it's going to be using cash flows to buy Bitcoin and put it on your treasury. Ultimately, the ultimate goal, I think, sign of maturity of this space is when you have companies that are S&P 500 companies that are not just the Apples and Microsofts and Googles of the world, but eventually they are doing this, where they are cash cows. You're creating billions of dollars, and they're turning around and buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin with that.
James Lavish explained that the MNAV, or the multiple on the net asset value of Bitcoin held on a company's balance sheet, fluctuates, but usually settles between about 1 to 2.5 times. He disclosed that they began buying MicroStrategy shares when the MNAV was around 1.2 after discussing the company's strategy with leadership. MicroStrategy stands out because it holds over 600,000 Bitcoin and has better access to capital markets compared to others. He described how companies use financial tools like convertible notes and preferred shares to raise funds for buying Bitcoin. Convertible notes can keep stock prices from rising too fast because traders hedge by shorting stock when they buy those notes. Preferred shares, on the other hand, pay dividends tied to Bitcoin's future price and don't dilute stock value. James Lavish also mentioned Metaplanet as Japan's main Bitcoin proxy, filling a market gap since Bitcoin itself is harder for local investors to access. Metaplanet uses similar financial tactics, borrowing in yen to buy Bitcoin, creating an arbitrage opportunity. Other countries like Brazil, Canada, and the UK have similar situations with companies offering different regional advantages related to regulation and capital access. He stressed that each company's MNAV depends on factors like its competitive moat, leadership, and ability to raise capital for Bitcoin purchases. While MicroStrategy aims to be the biggest Bitcoin treasury company, others like 21.co plan to expand into Bitcoin finance products like lending. A change may come where companies with strong cash flow start buying Bitcoin directly, marking a new phase beyond just financial engineering. Do you think Bitcoin whales cashing out part of their holdings signals a shift in the market, or just smart long-term profit-taking? Please drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video, and hit your thumbs on the like button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.